What I'd like to do now is to introduce the first of three speakers that will take us through what is the state of GIS in North Carolina, reflecting a little bit, recognizing our accomplishments, but looking forward. And the final speaker, Keith Masbach, who will talk to us about our profession and the importance of learning new skills and being nimble and being receptive to doing that. So with that, I'd like to introduce Stan Duncan. Stan is the chair of the North Carolina Geographic Information Coordinating Council. He hails from Henderson County, where he was the assessor there up until his retirement a couple of years ago, but he has lots of experience at the state level too. He came onto the council in 2012, became chair in 2013, and continues in that role. He's been a high energy, just a great leader for the council coming from the local government perspective. So, Stan.
Thanks, Tim. And good morning, and welcome to your 2017 GIS conference. I must tell you, I do have about 21 years in state government and about 13 in local government. And I've fought cases up to the Supreme Court, North Carolina, been engaged in a lot of different activities, but nothing has been as exciting as being around the professionals that make up this GIS community. See, Tom Tribble just wandered in off the street from South America, bird watching probably. But it's a very energetic group, and I want to commend you. Your attendance here at this conference denotes your professionalism, period. But you represent a most enviable collaboration, and you'll hear that word a lot, of really what I think of as left brain thinking and right brain thinking. Left brain is normally considered to be that analytical part where you do the logical processes and thinking. The right brain being the more creative, maybe you think in 3D instead of 2D. But that's what you are. You balance the two of those better than any group, any other discipline that I'm aware of. And you do it at the local level and you do it at the state level. You do it in cities and counties and every state agency. And I just think that's a marvelous attribute. I also believe that you are not just practitioners of the GIS science art, but you're obviously the developers. And the big part for me is you're the dreamers of what if and why not. In one of my former lives as a government employee, I had the opportunity to send people to conferences. Many of you know Pam Carver from Henderson County, and she was the land records supervisor for me. I went to the first GIS conference that I attended was in San Diego. And I immediately, on about the second day, realized I was in over my head. There were people in my office that could benefit a lot more than I could. Pam was one of those people, another database individuals, the second one. So for the next 2 years while I was there, I sent them to that conference. Why? Because they could get more of the kernels out of that conference than I ever could. I could hear things, see things, observe things, but I knew where my pasture was fenced or where my limitations were. They were the doers. They were the dreamers of the what if and the why nots. And that's why I sent them. You're here today partly because I believe that's where you fit in as well. And so I would encourage you, and this was my rule when I sent someone to a conference, bring back a kernel from that conference, something that you can use as often as you possibly can, something that will help you be transformative in your thinking and in what you deliver as services to our citizens. That's the rule. Now, I don't get to sign your paychecks, so I can't force that on you. But I think certainly within the program that Tim outlined, you have multiple opportunities for these kernels. And I would certainly suggest that you take advantage of those. Okay, now we have to figure out which one is the advance. It's not the red one. Okay, we'll start with the state of GIS in North Carolina. I want to take just a quick look at this, at how the technology and the practice has evolved from the grassroots to mainstream. especially here in North Carolina. I think the actions of the council in particular affirm much of what's been going on. And the phrase that I like to refer to is we've done a lot of right things and we've done a lot of right things better. We may not always be the first to do them, but we choose the right things and we choose to make them better. I go back a long time. I started at State Revenue in '82, and I already had a career before that, so you can imagine how old I am. But I remember when GIS was thought of as these are much prettier maps than what we were getting off the blue line. You've moved light years beyond that. But that's where I entered into the picture. Today, consumers of the geospatial data are in the mainstream. They have high expectations for applications, for services, especially in web services. Early success factors for the state. I think if you remember where Tim had a slide up about partnerships and who actually came here in the early GIS conference 30 years ago, it's the same group of people. I would want to call out, though, in land records management, two individuals, Don Holloway and Connie Wester, because I actually observed them crisscrossing the state, and they were trying to sell the value of land records management systems to boards for the benefit of their economic growth. And it was a hard sell in many cases. Second, of course, the state, we've talked about focusing on establishing a GIS-centric or GIS-focused state agency in '77 that eventually evolved to become CGIA. I also want to call out from the North Carolina DOT, Ed Schuler, who back in the day saw an opportunity for partnership. I don't know how many people here are from DOT today, but he saw the opportunity for partnership and he got engaged. And what we have learned in going around the country talking to other people, that oftentimes some of the state agencies want to remain a silo and they fight this idea of collaboration. Ed Schuler saw that as an opportunity, and he was a collaborative partner early on, and so I call out him for his foresight in that. To this day, NCDOT is a strong collaborative partner. State and federal government, especially in the environmental sector, U.S. Geological Survey, they were all key partners early on. Local government and their COGs, respective COGs, were obviously very much involved, slowly, but they got there. Universities, especially those here in the Triangle area, were very instrumental in helping to develop tools, techniques, and so a call out for them. One that you might not always think about is the Office of State Budget and Management. They saw early on, and you have to remember that's the site where the census is centered in North Carolina. They take care of that. Bob Coates and his staff. The state demographer is in the Office of OSBM. So we are continuing to further that partnership. And then Tim mentioned the executive orders. Governor Martin in July of '91, and the interesting thing, followed up by Governor Hunt of a different party in May of '93. So early on, the idea of GIS really transcended political boundaries, ratified, of course, by the session laws in 2001. The council, I'm going to bet that everyone who is a member of the council has been on several committees beforehand, several working groups. That continues to be the strength of the council. It's in the committees and the working groups. That's where we recognize fresh ideas. They get shared. They get vested, if you will. Leadership is encouraged, and the value is obviously tested and confirmed through those committees. The council itself continues to be an advocate for you because you're the ones that's doing the work. It's a forum that combines the views from local, state, federal, utility, private GIS, just as what Tim mentioned in his slide about who were the early participants. It's truly, the council itself is truly a cross-section of the community. Let me share with you something from my old buddy Russell Akoff. He lived from 1919, so he's in my generation, to 2009. I don't subscribe to all the management theories that I hear bandied about, but this is one that I do I've paraphrased, and I think it's appropriate for you. It was the first thing that I shared with the council when I became chair, is that many of our problems arise out of doing the wrong thing better. The more efficient, and you know everybody likes to be more efficient, that term gets thrown at you. The more efficient you are at doing the wrong thing, the worse you become. It's much better to do the right thing poorly than the wrong thing better. If you do the right thing poorly and correct it, you will get better. I think we need to think beyond the status quo. We've just heard gentlemen mention the pressures of budget. We all are aware of those, but we still need to think beyond the status quo. We have to prove the value of GIS to everyone, to all your leaders, to all your supervisors, to community leaders, to everyone. We need to think big. We need to think transformative. Seek transformative change again in our services. 4 things I think really highlight the council's actions. The first being NC1 map. We've moved, as the GIS community has moved, we've moved from product to services. We've moved from static data to integrated services. This began in 2003, a vision of the council to create this central online location to discover and gain access to free downloadable data and web services. It continues to be the focal point, and I will share with you 2 quick comments. One, if you have the opportunity, when somebody says, how can I get some data, go with them to the website, even if it's over the phone, and walk them through that process. They become a power user when you do that. Secondly, it's amazing how many people work in the IT world and are not familiar with NC1 map, but their spouses are, because they work in a related field that goes to NC1 map. We need to get the education out. Imagery, I want to start you back in circa 2002. I should say perhaps the lack of orthoimagery at that time. If you'll look at the counties that appear in white, they had no digital imagery on record at that time. The ones sort of shaded in a gray-blue, 39 counties, they had imagery older than 4 years, and some of that imagery was even much older than that. The problem was local. It depended on local funding for the most part. And so if you couldn't get the funding, you didn't get the imagery. Look at where we are right now in our current cycle from 2016 to 2019. And again, I have to get a shout out to Richard Taylor, who heads up the 911 board and his staff, and also to Danny Lineberry, who's currently the state CIO for the 911 board as chair. They fund the program. Now, we believe we're saving money with this, but aside from that, we now have a platform for a consistent delivery of product. And now, at this current point in time, 50 of the counties, the ones you see in the purple and the ones you see in the coastal blue, those counties now have extended imagery beyond their border. For 7 miles outside their border, they have additional imagery. It'll be up to you to use that imagery to get addresses and so forth to better respond to 911 calls that might come in across a boundary when it pings to a tower in the nearest towers in a different county. So we did that. Tim was instrumental in that. Richard Taylor was instrumental in that. When you come back for the 2019 conference, every county in the state will have that 7-mile additional boundary of imagery. And lastly, standards and practices. Standards, let's be honest, standards aren't sexy. Metadata is not sexy. Hey. But they are the backbone for the integrity of the GIS world. We are very fortunate. If you'll look at this, it's in chronological order by time, by date. You'll see the updates that occurred. GPS data collection, metadata, orthoimagery, street center lines, parcels, and LiDAR. The standards behind that makes it valuable, makes it consistent, makes it worthwhile for others to say, I believe in what that data is showing. What you're doing with this is you're gaining believability behind the data that's presented. A strong suit, not very, it takes up a lot of time in the council meetings, not very sexy, as I said, but it's very, very necessary. What does it come down to? It comes down, the proof is in, if you will, the award. Proof of effort is right here. The ERISA award this past year, John Bridgers, Jeff Brown, and Tom Morgan, I think, went up to receive that. They represented the Secretary of State's office and the council. Distinguished Enterprise System Award in their annual Exemplary Systems in Government competition. So congratulations to all of those who worked on it. A special shout out to Tom Morgan and Pam Carver, who served as the chair of that working group to get it going, and John Bridgers and Jeff Brown were the assistants that made sure that when the data came in, it got put in the right place. Some current success factors. New and continuing state investment. We're working on it. We're pushing for it. It's slow, but it is coming about. Partnerships. State integration of local authoritative data. Everyone at the federal government recognizes your data at the local level, the county and the city level, is the most authoritative data. Be proud of that. It may not be well known locally, but it is well known outside your borders. And then stewardship of data in ways that assure quality at the source. And that's what we're, again, selling. We're selling quality and we're selling reliability. A high national standing. For this, the credit again goes to you. You're, again, the practitioners, the developers, the dreamers of the what-ifs and the why-nots. I really believe that you can go to any GIS-related conference anywhere in the country, and if you tell them you're from North Carolina, I believe you will be accorded a level of respect that's reserved for very few others from other states. I truly believe that. We have created one of the first coordinating council, maybe not the first, but one of the first, and we hold the largest state GIS conference, thanks to you, in the country. In my view, this exemplifies collaboration in action. You're the living proof that it works, long term. Again, the credit goes to you for all that you've accomplished. A quick look ahead. I think as members of the GIS community, especially here in North Carolina, you have much to be proud of. There are two significant developments that's already in progress regarding applying our geospatial data outside this state. The first one is the National Address Database. USDOT and the U.S. Census Bureau are taking the lead in collaboration at that level, but they're going to depend on data coming from the state, which is coming from you, authoritative address data coming from you at the local level. And the second, I should say on the address database, we are told by census officials that we probably are at least in the top 5, maybe the top 3 in the nation for the quality of our address data. That means we got room to get a little bit better. Joe Seawash and I from CGIA, we attended a conference in 2015 in Maryland to bring this idea to a head, and it seems to be percolating along. We'll see how strong the coffee is when it's finished. The National Parcel Database, again, Jeff Brown, John Bridgers, and I attended that conference or summit in Reston, Virginia last spring. They gave me 10 minutes. I was representing another organization, theoretically, but I talked about GIS in North Carolina. They weren't there to see what I was talking about, so I could talk about what I wanted to. I wanted to talk about our state parcels project and how it tied into addresses, how it ties into service delivery for a host of state agencies and a host of counties and other municipal services. There are no limitations, in my opinion, as to what can be done in North Carolina with these two projects. They are not limiting. They are opening up doors for us to be, one, again, a national leader, and two, prove what we can do. My last pronouncement is to go forth and be transformative. Continue to ask what if and why not. It is your professional GIS community. You are it. I believe those characteristics that I've mentioned a couple times are in your DNA, inescapable. I want to thank you for your kind attention this morning. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Thanks for your leadership and directing the work of the council over the past 4 years. So, thanks again. Next up, to continue a little bit some of the themes that Stan has raised and taking it to another level, we have a good friend of mine and my boss, John Correllus. John is the Deputy State CIO, but the more important title that he has is Chief Data Officer. So this is a trend around the country. North Carolina is on the forefront of this trend at the state level. John's going to share a little bit about what that's about and how it relates to us. But you should consider John one of us because that's how he started. So I'll let him talk about it. John.
Good morning. So I'm very proud to be here because I feel like I was thinking, how can I introduce myself? Because many of the faces are familiar. And I said, please don't use words like street cred because I actually came from the GIS community. My first 15 years were in the geospatial community, so I feel like I'm coming back home to these conferences. I've actually attended more conferences than not people in this room, but probably about 7 or 8 conferences since I've been in government. The one thing that did scare me as I start to look out is who is actually doing any geospatial analysis in the state today. You all are here, so I think the actual data creation and the analytics around geospatial is stopped. But that's okay. This is fun. Real quick, show of hands. I'm a big believer in being honest and open. How many people are just excited to be here, but also excited to not be in a stuffy office today? That's okay. That's okay. So a little bit about myself. I did start in GIS in 1994, so I've been around quite a bit. So I started out in the private sector and moved over to the government sector in 1996. I worked for the Department of Commerce and then changed jobs a little bit in state government. But the last 7 or 8 years I've been only slightly removed from GIS, but paying close attention because I feel like it's one of the most critical data assets the state has. And I believe it's a strategic asset for all organizations, both public and private. My role as Chief Data Officer, and I do agree that's the most important title, is we're trying to leverage our data assets, trying to improve services, trying to deliver better services, operational efficiencies, all those things. So I'm going to talk a lot about data management and probably very little about the GIS technology because it's really about the data. Stan alluded, I'm not going to use your quote, but basically what we don't want to do is really good analytics against really bad data, right? So then you get really bad results. So I echo Stan's sentiment around that. I actually run a group that is called the Data Division, not the most creative name, but that's what it does. The whole group is aligned to data. And again, leveraging our data assets to improve North Carolina. I'm sorry. Good. So I'm going to talk, it's not going to be a waterfall presentation, but I'm going to weave some of my thoughts throughout this presentation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about challenges and opportunities because I think the GIS community and really, any technology services, they always have challenges, organizational challenges. I just want to go into that a little bit and see what yours are. We're going to do a poll in a little bit. Data management. I'm the Chief Data Officer. What do you expect? You're going to get a lot of this, okay? So I'm going to talk a lot about data management because that's really critical. And then partner and share. Stan talked a lot about the Geographic Information Coordinating Council. I think we can talk about the successes with GICC for hours, to be honest with you. And Stan didn't do this, but I'm going to ask this. I think we have time. By show of hands in the room, who's actually participated on the council, work group, or any have been associated with the council in this room?
Stand up, be proud.
Be proud. Yeah, you should be proud. You've made a lot of things happen. I think I probably saw, I'm not going to do a count, but probably 40 to 50 people. This is a group that is made up of private citizens, utilities, state government, local government, federal government. this is a place that you really can participate and add value to GIS in the state of North Carolina. And I'm going to talk a little bit about trends. Now, my trends may be a little different. There may be half of those trends that you can Google and see, yeah, that's the trends. Everyone knows Internet of Things, big data. But some of the other trends are going to be more what I would say grassroots trends I see for the state of North Carolina around GIS. So we're going to do a poll. So I'm only going to do one poll. But as a GIS professional, what is your biggest organizational challenge? Insufficient funding, never enough staff, limited personal development opportunities, competing priorities, and recognizing the value of GIS. So again, go to your application, click on the live polling, and let's see what we got. Okay. Give it 10 more seconds. Okay. I think we're settling into what's important to y'all. This was a really bad question to ask y'all. They're all important, right? So it's hard to figure out what's the most important, and that's where you're seeing kind of a mixed bag, but competing priorities definitely is winning out. So I would say from the conference, how do we message to actually tackle as far as these competing priorities? Every organization deals with it. What I would say 10, 15, 20 years ago, recognizing the value of GIS would have probably been about 90%. So we've moved the needle there. I'm going to move on, but we'll let that finish out. There's also additional organizational challenges. Again, that's a trick question. We all face these as to what degree do we have these challenges. Stakeholder expectations. Google can do it. Uber can do it. Why is it so hard? Is that minimizing us as a profession, right? People may not know what really goes into creation of that data, making that data accurate. So I think it's stakeholder expectations that things are so easy now in technology when they might be, but there's still a lot of work efforts that go into it. Data management strategies. I'm going to hammer this. You have to plan what you're going to do with your data and how are you going to leverage other people's data. How do you integrate that data? How do you get the value out of that data? What problems are you trying to solve? Dealing with the data deluge, right? So this would be the big data concept. You've heard it probably a zillion times, big data, big data, big data, and there's only about 1,000 ways to define it. But really the data deluge is, I would focus on what's the quality of the data, the veracity. Okay, everyone's probably heard the V's. I'd also say what's the value? How are you going to use it? What is it going to provide to your organization? And then also with GIS, it's the variety too. Sensor data, you have orthoimagery, you have so many different varieties of data, so how do you deal with that? Keeping up with technology, and I'm actually going to flip this, when not to keep up with technology. We all want to go get the latest iPhone, we want to go get the latest this, the latest that. How do you know when it's time to invest in the technology? Okay, it's not always the latest, greatest, it may be how you use it. And so that last point is fully leveraging the investments in data and technology. So Stan talked a little bit about enterprise data, investing in data together. Let's go ahead and make sure we have our use cases together so that when we actually do look to do a data effort, that we actually can fully leverage and get the value that we can out of those investments. And again, technology. A lot of this is about people too. So I look around the room, don't do it now, but make sure you introduce yourself to who you're sitting next to because they may be able to add value and they may have technology that you could potentially leverage and extend. So definitely meet a lot of folks here. One of my favorite quotes is Thomas Edison. We've been using it at our State Eye Center, which is, there's a better way to do it, find it. Okay? So that's a really good quote. Let's be creative. Let's be innovative. And innovation doesn't necessarily happen with a technology investment. It's how do we do things better. For those in government, for those in private sector, those are just whoever we're supporting. What we're all trying to do is obtain better outcomes and more value. And I look at this as a very important to our organization when we look at data. What we're trying to do is move data up the value chain. Okay, so we want to have good data. We want to understand that data. We want to create turn that data into information. We want to analyze it appropriately and turn it into knowledge so that someone can make a decision. That's why the state that's why y'all collect data, use data, is to maybe protect citizens, to actually protect the environment, provide better services, increased efficiencies for a private sector company, make better decisions to maybe gain revenue. But this is why we're using data, and I think sometimes we're all so busy analyzing and learning the tools that we really need to understand what the value we're trying to accomplish is. This would be my favorite cartoon next to The Simpsons. Geospatial data is a strategic asset. I want you to remember that. Data is a strategic asset. This is very important. This is just a cartoon that says, let's shrink big data into small data and hope it magically becomes great data. That's a horrible approach. I'm just going to tell you right now. We have to really understand how we want to leverage our data to improve our services. We have to plan it. It doesn't magically happen. All of a sudden, there's just now these 30 layers that pop up that we can use to help improve services or citizens' interactions. We need to plan for it. How are you going to use it? How are you going to integrate it? So you have to have a plan for your organization around data. This is what I call my house slide as far as an organization. And this slide we can talk to for about 5 hours. This is the most critical slide that we have. This is the most important, I would say, asset when you think about having a data management strategy. We all want to get to a data-driven government or data-driven company. Okay? That's actually at the very top. That's the easy part. That's the culmination of a lot of work efforts. You know, going down the next level of the house, you have data integration, reporting, analytics. That's still in the tools, fund layer, things of that nature. But the base of the house, the foundation, is the most important part. So data governance, again, not the most sexy word in the world. Okay, but how do you manage that data? How are you going to govern that data? Okay. Stan used the term authoritative data source, hierarchy, master data, whatever you want to call it. What's the hierarchy? What's the authoritative source? And how do you secure or not secure that data? Again, we were trying to be as open as we can with our data, but you have to understand how to handle that data, and that's very important to build confidence with stakeholders. Data standards. I think this is sexy, actually. But you need to know about the data. You need to know how not to use the data. There's actually good data and bad data and good data. So you really need to understand what pieces of that data you can use for what analysis. Again, data quality, adhere to standards. Do the right thing. Don't take a shortcut. Document what you got so the next person that's going to use it doesn't use it wrong. And this is common identifiers, but really this is just integration. How does all this data integrate? What is it integrating? How do you integrate these different data from different sources? And then business process is somewhat overlooked. You can create all these data, you can adhere to standards, but you have to have business process, business owners, leadership that understands why you're doing it and how it's going to benefit them. So you have to have good leadership. And I would look around the room, we're all leaders in what we do. You may not be the leader of an organization, but you're leading your effort, whatever you're doing. So look at it as a leadership opportunity. Stewardship. I work with all of the state agencies, and probably about 3 years ago or so when I took on this role, when I walked into an agency and said, I want your data, I mean, it was like, holy cow, this is going to be tough. Really, it's that concept of going from data ownership to data stewardship. So in government, we're not the owners of the data. We are definitely not the owners. The citizens are the owners of the data. We're stewards. We're just managing it appropriately. So we got to take that stewardship concept. GICC has really taken that to another level and really been promoting that for years. We need to take that stewardship to heart. And then accessibility. How do you actually access the data? Right? APIs, web services, things of that nature. This is the most critical slide, I think. If you don't have this covered in your organization, take away, go home and start working with leaders, other people, and start making sure you have this down, you have a strategy around this. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I think that we have many good examples in the state. I think we're going to hear a lot of other good examples throughout this two-day conference of people being successful, working with data, delivering business value, programs and services and whatnot. But when we talk about data sharing, I mean, 911 is a great example, LIDAR. We've heard talk around census. Obviously, a lot of folks are working in the room. There's a lot of great stories that we can tell about how we've actually managed our efforts together. I do think there's a lot more stories to be told as we look ahead. And here's my weird trends. Okay, so geospatial analytics, geoanalytics, whatever you want to call it, there's different definitions, different terms out there, but let's talk about it from a big data perspective. How do you actually take all this information and use it so it's a valuable, you get some valuable return on whatever you're putting into that effort. So big data, how does GIS play in that? I think that's going to be a trend now and going forward for a long time. Internet of Things, again, this isn't nothing new, but let's think about this. There's sensors everywhere collecting information. If you walk into Best Buy, you can see the fridges that are basically staring at you, waiting to collect your information. Uber. Folks heard of Uber movement? So all that information gets collected as far as your Uber journey, the time, the route, and that Uber's turning that data over to cities, saying, here's what we've found. You may want to think about adjusting your traffic patterns. Holy cow, what a resource. Data is being collected everywhere from all different types of sources. UAS, we're going to hear a really good session. I think it's later this afternoon. We have Representative Torbit is coming over from the General Assembly to actually participate on that. That's going to be great insight. I mean, he's a proponent of UAS. He's been working on policies. We're going to have a lot of really good conversation around that and how that, looking ahead as far as how commercially folks are going to use that as well as from a government perspective. I know obviously that's a pretty hot policy topic, but one that really needs to be addressed. Open everything, okay? Depending on which group I present to, I present all over the U.S. I can get on my soapbox, but I think we have other things on the agenda. But open everything is interesting because does that mean we're closed? No. As a matter of fact, GIS has been really sharing data, been very open for a long time. So open data concepts are going to continue. Our citizens expect transparency, and they deserve transparency. So open everything. And then obviously open APIs, open source. Open everything is going to continue for a long time. Okay? Mobility. Anywhere, anytime, any device. That could be data collection. That's really turning into analysis now. So the expectations are everything mobile, GIS, non-GIS, but I think it's more complex for GIS when you start talking about analytics and some other things. Location services remain valuable. I think this is something we deal with every day. I actually left my house today and I came here instead of the office. But holy cow, my phone wouldn't let it go, that I wasn't going to the office this morning. It knows my every move. Okay, I swear I pulled into my parking spot at work the other day, and about 30 seconds before I arrived, it told me I'd already parked. So either I'm a slow driver, but I mean, these location services are pretty critical. This is also a conversation I have with my 75-year-old mother about location services. She's a GIS expert now, by the way, because she knows where she's going. She knows, her phone knows where she's going. She thinks she knows it all now. But location services remain cool and are going to remain valuable, and they may remain a little scary, to be honest with you. And then collaboration. And this was really, I was going to use the term innovation, but I want to be cautious. Okay, innovation, sometimes you get this perspective when you hear the term that the latest, coolest, greatest. That's not really how I view innovation. I view innovation as collaboration. Yes, technology trends, new technology comes out of collaboration, and we could call it innovation. But at the end of the day, even in good government times when we have budgets. The trend is going to be, how do we do more with what we're already investing in? Okay, to me, that's collaboration and innovation. So what we're already investing from this universe of GIS people and organizations in the state of North Carolina, how can we leverage that? That's the collaboration and that's the innovation I think we're all striving. That's why we're here. So how can you contribute, I think, to statewide GIS? Well, we need to focus on business value. So it's not always about the technology. It kind of is behind closed doors, but it's really about business value. So what are you trying to do? What are you trying to solve? You know, how's your business going to use this? What are the problem sets? Partner. Again, that's critical. None of us have all the answers. That's why we're at a conference like this. That's why this conference is so successful, because there's useful information. We have the GICC from a partnership perspective so that we can collaborate around data and other initiatives, standards. Focus on quality. Again, it's not about just getting things done quickly. It's about documenting. You may move on to another job and someone's going to be using the data that you created. It should be about quality and sticking to that. Embrace data stewardship. If you don't embrace this, you're going to be left behind. Okay? Embrace it. Don't protect data that doesn't need to be protected. Okay? Share. Be open. Again, this is citizens' data. If you're in a government agency, it's citizens' data. They paid for it. Period. Innovate. Collaborate. Okay? Collaboration's critical. Get involved. GICC, ERISA, CURISA. There's so many groups to get involved so that you can share your knowledge and gain some knowledge. Establish a vision, and Kurt is going to be talking a little bit about the GIS profession and where we need to go with this. This isn't just a vision for your organization. What's your vision for yourself? How do you want to contribute to the GIS community? How do you want to grow your professional development? Technology is going to change. There's this whole thing called data science that I don't know if we've mentioned in this room, but GIS professionals are very close to that data science type concept. You're actually delivering business value, you're doing technology, you're kind of sitting in between a lot of times. So how do we actually adjust our careers? How do we actually grow our careers? And how do we target where we want to be? And then always be strategic. We all have mundane tasks. We may be doing very tactical work, but it's for a reason. Okay, so approach everything strategically because I think that's critical. It also makes the job more exciting because I know we may be doing some digital editing or something, but at the same time, why are you doing it? What are you actually contributing by doing that? Think strategic, be strategic, and recognize the value of your data. Okay? So, thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for the vision, and thank you for the things that you said that we can act on starting after we leave the conference. So one of the things John mentioned before we move to the final speaker of the morning, one of the things John mentioned was Representative Torbett's presence at the conference. You know, this is a first for us. This is the first legislator that's been on our conference program. So that's a real milestone for us. Representative Torbett is the expert in the General Assembly for UAS technology, and particularly the policy and the legal side. He was responsible for bills getting passed in the legislature that help us guide this technology of UAS going forward. So he's on a panel at 1:30.